Hello there and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, the founder of Utreamer Limited. We make interesting fertilizers, novel biostimulants and organic biopesticides. And today, this afternoon, as it's a Friday afternoon, I've been out spraying my local village sports field with hydroponic fertilizers. A very expensive way of fertilizing some sports turf normally, but as a manufacturer of hydroponic fertilizer, it's not that expensive for me, and I could just put some rejected stock that didn't quite pass the quality control tests onto this field. So hopefully they'll be growing really well, because normally hydroponic fertilizer is too expensive for sports turf. Anyway, I said yesterday that I'd be talking about cold stress because there's a couple of aspects I haven't covered before. And one is that often when you get cold roots, that could be a particular type of stress for plants that's hard to diagnose. And that's because you might have positioned your grow room somewhere where the floor is very cold. And if you're not using sources or raising your plants up off the ground, you can get very cold roots. And you can get very cold roots if you're using a nutrient tank cooling system as well, and you're not controlling it properly. Now, the symptoms of this and the problems it causes are very different to just general cold stress. One of the things you get is desiccation. So it might look like your plants aren't getting enough water so you get desiccation. And this happens in the real world, nature. It happens in nature. Conifers, when there's a very warm spring, conifers can dehydrate and die off, desiccate, because the soils are still very cold and the air is high. And so the stomata are open, but the pores in the roots, what are called aquaporins, they're not open yet. And so the plant dries out. So you can get that. You can also get a limitation in phosphorus uptake. And so in legal cannabis, this is purpling of the stems. That's a very common symptom, or purpling of the leaves in many other crops. Okay. Now, in cucumbers and melons, a lot of growers have moved to hydroponics to get away from this issue. So soil-based cultivation, this was one of the limiting factors in that. And also grafting as well. Grafting is often used to put a cold-tolerant variety on. Interestingly, I read a report today that a lot of growers are now moving to grafting in peppers because there's a variety that's resistant to fusarium. So they can graft on their favourite variety on top of that and get resistance to fusarium, which is a big problem in peppers. Now, the other big thing that I talked about was the Spanish researchers, I think at the University of Barcelona, or should I say Catalan researchers. They may not be like to be called Spanish, but there you go. They live in Spain, so they are Spanish if they like it or not. They published a paper in Plant Physiology, which is a very well-respected scientific journal, and they found they could genetically modify tomato plants to have much greater cold stress by greater activation of antioxidant enzymes, stress defense genes, and synthesis of lots of defense chemicals like polyamines and things like this. If they increase the level of what is called glycosylated steroids in the plant. But in reality, it's basically what we call cholesterol in humans. Sterols, they are what are in plants in the cell walls. So they're a good thing to have. And if you increase them in plants, then it increases their cold stress tolerance. So you can have a cold tolerant tomato. So the great guys, the researchers at the University of Barcelona have done this research. In actual fact, it will probably be the growers of, Scotland, Norway, Russia, Canada, Argentina, Antarctica, that will benefit from this, because you could have tomato crops that could grow, I don't know, they could maybe grow outdoors. It doesn't say frost tolerant, it just says cold tolerant. So maybe they're thinking more, maybe the traditional sort of Almeria greenhouses, but maybe in the north of Spain. Maybe it's things like that. So shout out to Professors Albert Ferrer and Teresa Altabella. It's unusual that for Spanish researchers. Normally they have two surnames, don't they? So yeah, check out that research from the University of Barcelona, published in plant physiology. That's a really interesting study. You may be pro-GM, you might be anti-GM, but it's still an interesting study to find that you can increase the cold resistance by increasing what is essentially cholesterol but in plants we call that sterols or cystosterol or stigmasterol. And so, yeah, you can get them. These cholesterol sterol type compounds also occur in fungi as well. So, yeah, that's really interesting. What else was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about an interesting news story. And that was that a greenhouse in Holland is no longer going to be a greenhouse. It's going to be, well, I'm not sure what's going to happen with it. It's been sold to Eli Lilly, which is a pharmaceutical company, who have made a range of different pharmaceuticals over its many years in existence, an American pharmaceutical company, and with some degree of controversy. And they bought a greenhouse. And I'll talk about that tomorrow because that makes a good news story. And the whole thing about Eli Lilly and botanicals is a really interesting study. So it should be a good one for its own. So yeah, check out that one tomorrow. Eli Lilly and their new botanical venture, or is it? Or are they just buying greenhouses and they're going to convert them into factories? Who knows? Check it out tomorrow. All right. Thank you very much for listening. That's been Hydroponics Daily for today. If you found this of any use, then please leave a Apple podcast review. If you're not on Apple, don't leave a podcast review. Just click follow and then check out utrema.co.uk and you'll find some of the amazing products we manufacture and have developed and invented for use in hydroponics. Something that lots and lots of products that you won't find in other fertilizer and nutritional companies' portfolios. All right. Until tomorrow, thanks very much for listening. Goodbye.